I'm Bob McCown, and this is the podcast. We bid you greetings and salutations with John Shannon, of course. And look who the cat dragged in. The former coach of the Washington Capitals, Anaheim Ducks, and Minnesota as well, and still in Minnesota because they probably won't let him leave. Bruce Boudreau is with us. Gabby, you look beautiful. How are you?
I'm good, actually. Good morning, guys. Nice to see you.
Now, you're not stuck there because of this COVID stuff, because you could wander around the U.S., but you can't come back to Canada, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. I've been trying to get back to Canada, but I mean, if I go there, you got to quarantine for 14 days. Yeah. And then if I came back here, then I'd have to quarantine here for 14 days. So it becomes a little bit difficult unless I was classified as an essential worker. And at this stage, I'm a non-worker. So I don't think essential is in the word.
And I don't think you want to give up golf for 14 days, Bruce.
No. and you know, my mom, because I would be going to see my mom, which is what I want to do. But she said, son, for 14 days, the first 5 or 6 days, we'd get along great. But by the 14th, we'd want to kill each other. So you stay where you are.
Well, we've missed our annual golf game this year.
I know.
What are you going to do?
I've missed a lot of stuff about coming home. This is the first time in my life that I haven't been in the Toronto area for the summer. So it's a crazy world we live in, and hopefully it ends soon.
And one of the few times that you're not involved in some sort of playoffs, whatever league you're coaching in.
Yeah. I mean, well, the only way I am involved, I'm doing TV for the NHL Network, so it's I'm getting a little bit of a little bit of juice there, but it's not the same as being behind the bench and fighting with your guys.
And have you finally learned that what radio and TV people do is really easy?
You know what? It's nowhere near as easy as you think. Well, as you guys would both know. I mean, I sit there when you're watching as just a normal guy and never being on, and it comes so fluently to you guys talking. But when you get behind the mic and they're asking you, it's just not that simple. That the words don't flow as easily as when you're sitting at home watching it on TV.
Hold on. I've seen some of those post-game press conferences. Those words kind of flow in front of microphones.
That's with me not thinking and just speaking without thinking. And as we know, sometimes doing that gets people in trouble.
Well, now you have a long-standing reputation, Boudreau, as a potty mouth. And you know, when you're behind the bench, you can
that's not
all
fair, Bob.
Well,
Bob,
you know, we saw the 24/7 or whatever the hell that thing was called, and profanity was spewing out of Gabby's mouth with a great regularity, and I respect that. But now, do you consciously think when you're on the air at the NHL Network, do you consciously remind yourself you got to behave?
Oh, not only that, it's what you say. I mean, I consciously, absolutely. But I mean, I think before I speak, because I almost got myself in trouble the other day because they were showing Jay Beagle from Vancouver. And I started saying, hey, listen, I've had Jay Beagle for 5 years. What a great guy, great player. But he never scored a goal with me, you know. And then I said, okay, hold on. I'm talking about Beagle's scoring acumen. You know, like he's just done something really good, and you're trying to be positive, and then you have a sarcastic remark thrown in at the end, and I had to pull back on that one.
The amazing thing, Bruce, about television and being a commentator, it's really easy to be negative. That's the one thing you learn. It's really easy to say things that are not as positive as they should be. And that's and then when you're on the other side, when you're a coach or whether you're a manager or with a team, you say, why did he say that? Because that's the first thing that comes out. It comes into your mind. If he did this, he would be better. And that's a real challenge when we're trying to sell the game at certain points.
It is, and that's what happens when you listen to McCown for the last 40 years. You learn about all the negatives, the sarcastic remarks, and you want to say them right away.
Come on, Gabby.
You
I
see,
just,
there you go.
but
There
it
you
was
go, being negative.
it was positive because I said I've listened to you for the last 40
Positive
years.
negative.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's great. Yeah, stand in line. So February, you got fired by Minnesota, and I don't remember if John was with me at the time, but we had you on the former show,
Mhm.
and at that point, and I did ask you, well, you're 65-ish years old. Do you want to keep going at this? And as I recall, your response was you weren't sure. Now, I don't know whether that was an immediate reaction to the fact that this had just happened or whether it was because of the circumstances and you're kind of frustrated. But you've had some, had 6 months or so, 7 months to think about this. What do you want to do?
Oh, I want to coach again.
Okay.
You know, the sometimes you get jaded when you get let go and you just don't know what you want to do. But I realized I've missed it terribly. And the one thing about coaching is it's or being a hockey player, I think, or a sports athlete is when you're with the team, it's your family within the family. Like, I mean, you're with them so much, and you sort of just miss being in that fight with your group here, and that's what I've found that I've missed the most. I mean, I'm not worried about energy or any of that stuff. I feel like I've got tons of it, and when you love something, you never get tired of it. But I don't want to go out the way it went out, or as I thought I had a pretty good career going here, and then to get fired and then just sort of disappear is not what I want to do. I want to get at least one more kick at the can and see if we can't change the script a little bit.
Two things. First of all, I did some number crunching yesterday. Your winning percentage, is between Scotty Bowman's at the top end. You're right up there. Toe Blake. There's a ton of guys that you're in that sentence with statistically. And based on that, can you be patient and wait? I mean, Todd Reardon was fired on the weekend. Can you be patient and wait for an opportunity? Are you one of those guys that's to be pounding the pavement?
Well, I'm probably the pounding the pavement type guy. I mean, if I was 55 or 53 and whatever, I'd probably be a lot more patient than I am now. I think I want to get right back in it. And hopefully, just want to be part of the NHL again. And it's something that we look forward to. My wife looks forward to, even though we're moving to a town that doesn't have an NHL team. We'd be very willing to sacrifice the year and leave the house empty to move somewhere else.
So now the Maple Leafs have requested permission to talk to you, but as an assistant coach, is that something you will consider, or are you going to wait for a head coaching job?
Well, I think if you just look at it, everybody would want the head coaching job first, but I have no problem being an assistant coach. I just want to work in the NHL and work with hockey people and be involved again. And I think I've got a lot to give in both situations. And but I haven't talked to anybody. It's all conjecture and media blown. So I mean, I'd be very happy to talk and sit down with anybody that is willing to listen.
Well, to clarify, I do know from a Maple Leaf perspective, they have asked permission of Billy Guerin to talk to you. So that's step number one.
Yes, that I do know.
Do you talk to Guerin at all? I mean, this is the guy that fired you. I mean, he came in as the GM, and it's not a new story, Gabby, that a GM comes in and the first thing he does is he wants to bring his own guys in with him. And that hasn't worked out so well. Do you still have conversations with him, with Guerin?
I haven't talked to him since the day he let me go.
Well, I don't blame you.
Well, he hasn't reached out. I would have talked to him, but he hasn't reached out to talk to me either. So
yeah.
And did you watch the Wild in the bubble?
Not so much.
No.
I would turn it on for a second, see what the score is, and then go to another game. When they were in the bubble at that point, there was so many games going on at the same time, I could avoid watching them.
Hey, just as a pure hockey guy, what did you think of the play-in tournament? What did you think of that hockey from noon to midnight?
You know what? I thought the round robin stuff for the most part stunk. Or no, stunk is a
See,
strong
there
word.
you go. You're
I
being
did,
negative again. See?
yeah, no, I didn't think. Well, wait, it gets positive because I really think those teams, those top six teams that were playing, knew that they were in and they were just trying to get ready like a preseason game. The other teams, the other games, I thought were great. I really thought that I was surprised at how intense it was with no fans in the building and how it seemed like not to matter to the players once it started getting. It was physical. It was, you didn't need the fans cheering or cheering them on to get into that mode. And I think it's continued right now and through the second round.
I'm intrigued by the notion that you didn't watch Minnesota. You flicked on watch the score, and then that was the end of it.
Oh, I can understand that, Bob.
Well, I can too. I mean, and I was just going to.
I don't watch Sportsnet, Bob. You know.
Well, when I left Global, I wouldn't watch Global after
There you
that.
go.
I mean, I've gone through that whole cycle too, and I'm wondering whether, Bruce, that's really what was going through your head. There's still that lingering bitterness about what happened, which I'm sure you don't think it was justified.
Well, yeah, and I think anybody that gets let go when they don't think it's justified is a little bit bitter. With myself, is I didn't want to watch them because I didn't want to critique them every 2 seconds and say, look, see what they're doing. And my wife would be beside me sitting there going, just watch the game type thing. And I didn't want to see them succeed because then I would think that, oh man, I did all this stuff wrong.
Yeah.
Now look at them and they're doing it right and they're winning and it was me. So you sort of don't want to see those things, you know. And I don't know. I just thought it'd be better left if I didn't know really what's going on too much about them, because I never phoned them or asked, hey, what happened? I never phoned any of the coaches in the bubble or anybody in the bubble and saying, how's it going or what have you. I sort of left it well enough and alone at that point.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
Let me throw one thing in there, a follow-up thing. And I'm gonna, this is sort of to both you guys. So here's I don't know why this popped into my head, but if Minnesota asked you to come back, would you even contemplate that? And I think of a guy like Billy Martin when he was with the Yankees. Now, granted, he was dealing with George Steinbrenner, who was the owner / general manager / president / everything. And that was a very bizarre situation. And I'm trying to remember, John, do you remember another situation where a coach went back to a team that he was fired from?
Randy Carlyle went to Anaheim twice.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
There's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
but there aren't many, right?
No, there's not a lot. Not a lot.
So would you?
Well,
you want to get back in the NHL.
I want to get back in the
answer.
NHL, like, you know, but it's the one thing with Steinbrenner and Bob Murray, there was a constant in both of those things. Right. Here, the GM that hired me is not the GM that fired me, and the GM that fired me didn't know me that well. So, I mean, if he all of a sudden turned around, you know, and said, hey, listen, we made a crazy mistake. Would you come back? I'd always think about coming back. I mean, I want to coach. So what are you going to do?
We talk about the most current situation. Do you, because it's so current, do you still have, is there ill will, or do you watch the Ducks, or has time passed enough with the Duck situation? And therefore, when you see the Caps win the Cup, has time passed with that?
Oh, times for sure. I mean, I was so happy for actually when they won the Cup for Nicky and Ovi and the guys that I coached before. I mean, if it was the coach after me that won the Cup, then I'd probably be a little different feeling. But they went through Dale Hunter and Adam Oates and, you know, before they got to Barry Trotz. So, I mean, that had sort of disappeared a little bit. Right. And, you know, and with Anaheim, again, there's still people there that I really like. And, I mean, you don't want you want to beat them so bad when you play them, when you're the coach that goes back into those teams. But no, I mean, I'm happy for them here. Right now, it's like it was Sportsnet. They're the latest guys to let you go. It's always the latest team that lets you
Yes,
go.
sir.
You don't want to see wins.
So that's an interesting point. And so what I wonder is, I've been fired a few times, and I'd like to think every time I was fired, I learned something, and I'm a better whatever I am now than I was before. Uh, would you say you've learned anything? Is there something? Have you changed? Would you have changed your philosophy for the next job? When I sit down, if I was running a team and I interviewed you, I say, okay, what have you learned from being out of the game for the last half season?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I think the one thing, if I ever get another interview, it's knowing the team might be totally different than what you would do with the team you had. I think with the team we had, probably just finished. There's very little I would have done different that than I did. I think at the stage. I mean, that I can publicly say.
Right.
But you know, I do think that you learn every time something bad happens, and you don't want to do that again. And you see it all the time. I mean, it's like having a situation come up, and then you might not see that situation for 3 years, but you remember that situation and you learn from it. And you would do something different than you did before.
Not me. I wouldn't do a damn thing any different. You know, the hell with them. So
that's because you're never wrong.
Oh,
Yeah.
not that I can recall. I mean, if you could point out the moment where I made a mistake or said something inaccurate, well, then by all means, go ahead. Either one of you. Like
public. We have to do
there
this
you go.
publicly.
So we're out of time now. You couldn't come up with anything right off the top of your head. So the hell with you. So you're watching this thing, this COVID initiated 2-site playoff
Tournament. It's a tournament.
Yeah.
Bob.
You okay with it? I mean, they've done a good job in preventing any of the guys from getting sick. We give them that. But we're watching games with nobody in the stands. They're trying to enhance the environment as best they can. And it's not bad. But what do you think overall?
I think they're doing as good a job as they could have possibly done. I can't possibly think of anything else unless there was some way to initiate to get maybe 3,000 fans in the building and spread them all out. And but I mean, I think the players are playing as hard as if there were fans in the building. I don't know what it's going to be like for the team that wins the cup and carries it around, but you know, after the game. But it's, you know what, like for hockey in August, I don't think it could have gotten any better or done any differently to make it better. I have no ideas on how that would have been. But so they took the bad situation of ending the season right there and tried to implement a positive ending to the season, and they're going to find one, and they've done as good as they can.
Anybody we've talked to, one of the key questions ends up becoming home ice advantage. And when you're playing every game, at least for the first 2 rounds, you're playing every game in the same arena. The Eastern teams will move to Edmonton after that. How much does that change your tactic when you know the only real difference is the fact if you're the home team, you can match? And you were never the greatest matcher anyway, were you?
Well, come on. You know what? I was on some of the teams I had, it was like, let them try and match me.
Right.
And where I think the team that's, it's always good to match if you can do it without disrupting everything on your team. But you know, like that's the only difference now, is the home ice advantage. There's no fan home ice advantage. There's no knowing the ice, the boards, the intricacies of all of those things. That's not an advantage. The only advantage is you get the last change. Now, in some cases, it's really important. Some cases, it doesn't matter much. But if you're a one-line team, let's say you're Colorado, who's mainly got that big line, and they play an awful lot of minutes here, and they're the visiting team, and you've got a great line on your side that can check and score. Maybe that's an advantage of being able to put them out against them all the time. But if you're 2 lines or 3 lines deep, it's really hard to match.
Yeah, well, all the more reason in playoffs, and this one particularly, with the value of a second line center. I mean, you get a second line center, like somebody like you were, Bruce.
I was more a 4th line center, but
I was trying
thank you.
I'm trying to be positive here. I'm trying to be
nice.
positive.
You were nice.
No, you were a first line. You were a first line center in the AHL.
Yeah, in the wrong league, but that's
I mean, tell it like it is, right?
Yeah.
That's like the famous story that Jack Adams and Guile Fielder, one of the great minor league players of all time. Guile Fielder was with the Red Wings, and he walked into into Adams' office and said, "I want to play 20 minutes a game." He says, "Okay, you got it."
And
Never played another game with the Red Wings.
Well, and look, let's be clear. I do, and John does too, remember the days when you were hovering around the NHL and they'd call you up for a game or two and you'd get a goal and an assist, and then they'd send you right back down. And I never understood that. So, that was
a frustrating part of my life, I think. Just to quickly, the most frustrating one was the one year I had 26 points in 24 games after they called me up. And then, but Stan Weir was still in the minors, and he was making a lot more money than me. So they just switched us up. And I just could never understand that. But back in the day, you never argued.
You couldn't.
You just sat and took it, and me wanting to be a Leaf so bad, I never asked to get traded or never asked anything until, never. And it got too late, and then all of a sudden you go from a prospect to a suspect, and that was over.
Hey, just to build on that, when you talk about being a Maple Leaf, would Red Kelly have been the biggest influence as you as a coach?
No.
Roger?
Roger would have been, I think, absolutely. Actually, it was probably George Armstrong.
Okay.
When I was with the Marlies, I mean, just as I think that coaching, I've taken a lot of George and Roger and put them sort of together, and a little bit of Andy Murray, who, when I was in Los Angeles, was he gave me the first opportunity and would take me aside and help me out and do all of those things when I'd been away from the game, the NHL for a long time at that point.
Wow.
Well, let's circle back a little bit to this conversation about the Maple Leafs asking to get permission, and they have got permission to talk to you. Have you ever, during your NHL coaching career, had an assistant with significantly more experience and success under you?
I don't know.
I'll tell you where I'm going with it in a minute.
Yeah, I had Paul McLean in Anaheim, who had just come on. He just gotten let go from Ottawa, but he was coach of the year, I think, the year before that. But not as a coach, I haven't had anybody else with any sort of success, I think. And I mean, I've only been allowed to pick my assistants at one time out of all the years I've been coaching. So, I mean, I've sort of inherited everybody else that's been there.
Hold on. So all these years you've coached the NHL, you picked your assistant coaches once?
Yes.
Can you tell us where?
Yeah, when I came to Minnesota, Chuck asked me, who do you want? And they got rid of all their staff. And I went and I got John Anderson and I got Scott Stevens. I picked those two. We kept Darby Hendrickson from the Minnesota staff. so I could at least have some knowledge on what the players were like. And he was a great, loyal guy too. But that was the only place. When I went to Anaheim, they picked two. They picked one guy. They allowed me to pick one assistant at that point, and that's when I chose Bob Woods. And Washington, they fired the coach, and I just got the assistants there. So it's only the one time in the 13 years that I really get to pick my whole staff.
I want to get back to, this conversation about experienced assistant coaches. If I'm Sheldon Keefe and the Toronto Maple Leafs, not the head coach, hire you as an assistant, I'm looking over my shoulder every time I turn around, because all of a sudden the next head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs I would almost guarantee it is you. How do you feel about that?
Well, I've often thought about it. If I was ever, I'm thinking, given the opportunity to be an assistant coach, the one thing I know is what I wanted in assistant coaches. And loyalty would be the number one thing.
Well,
and
yeah.
that's the one thing I don't think Sheldon Keefe would ever have to worry about. And that's the one thing that I would express the most on is I've had it happen where other people try to take your job, but so I know what it feels like. And I understand when you're saying that, but if this was a situation that I became or was lucky enough to get the opportunity to be part of the Leaf staff, that would be the last thing. That would be the thing I would express most that they didn't have to worry about.
Yeah, but you understand that.
I do understand.
It wouldn't necessarily be in your control or even in Sheldon's control. I mean, if they decide to make a coaching change, it's going to be somebody up above. I mean,
Bob, Bruce can't say this, but the bottom line is that, in my opinion, the person that has to make the phone call to Bruce isn't Brendan Shanahan. It isn't Kyle Dubas.
No, it's got to be
Sheldon. The
Keefe.
person that makes the call to Bruce has to be Sheldon Keefe.
I agree.
And the moment that occurs, if Sheldon's prepared to reach out, then there's going to be that equality and that understanding, and not taking words out of Bruce's mouth, there's going to be that loyalty.
Yeah. Well,
I just think it's the most important thing for a head coach to know that your assistants have your back. And I've learned that very well.
But I'll be honest, Bruce. I mean, I know you love the Maple Leafs from being a kid and living here, and but I just don't know why you'd be an assistant coach. You're going to get a head coaching opportunity. It may take 12 months. It may take a while. With your winning record, with your ability to entertain and sell tickets and do everything you do, I just don't know why you wouldn't be patient. Why wouldn't you be patient?
Well, I guess the biggest thing is I've never had the need to be patient. In other words, when I got fired from Washington, I was hired the next day. When I got fired from Anaheim, I was hired within the first week. And so it's this thing of not being on the ground floor fighting with your guys is driving me nuts. So and you know that the window of opportunity is not big when you're at my age. So you just want to work and be part of something. I mean, obviously I want to be a head coach in the NHL, and I think I'm more than qualified to work with work again, but I don't want to not be working. Right. Is what I'm saying.
Fair enough.
Before we let you go, the talking heads at Sportsnet have tried to make a big deal out of Vancouver getting through the first round, and it is a big deal. I get it, but now they have run into, I think, the team that's probably the favorite right now to win the Stanley Cup, and that's Vegas. Now, I may be wrong, and there are other teams in there, but St. Louis is out, Washington is out. Boston is really good, and they would give them a battle. Probably would be favored against Vegas, but So Vancouver runs into Vegas in the opening game and just gets thrashed 5-0. Is there a team that jumps out at you as the most likely to raise the Stanley Cup as of this date?
Well, I don't like agreeing with you. It's
I
just,
know.
but I believe you're right with Vegas. I've thought Vegas all along. Um, I mean, I see faults with Colorado and with Dallas as a Central Division coach. I mean, had good enough success against them, but I think Vegas has touched all the boxes in the West. I mean, they're 4 lines deep. They've got a great speed on the back end. Their goaltending, you're not going to run into trouble if one goes. There's 1A, and I think they're the strongest team in the West. Like, especially with Colorado maybe losing Grubauer, Eric Johnson. That's a big bite out of that team. In the East, you know what? I really like Boston, even though I think Tampa is going to come back and make a really good series of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Islanders are good, but I don't think they're good enough to get there. Yeah, they played a really good structure and everybody's together, but I just don't think they're good enough to win. And I think Philly had a tough enough time with Montreal that showed. I thought they were going to be right there at the end, but I just don't know if they showed me enough against Montreal to prove that they could beat a Boston or a Tampa in the end.
John?
Well, I've picked Boston from the beginning. I just think that Boston is so complete. And when you think about having 4 months off, and then you can put chemistry of Bergeron, Pasternak, and Marchand on the ice and know that it's going to work every time. They're the team to beat in the East. I thought Colorado. Bruce's points about the injuries are very valid. I just, in watching the tournament so far, I just thought Colorado was light years ahead of everybody because of their speed and their depth at forward. I do think their second line can be a factor, but if they don't have goaltending, it's going to be a short time against Vegas.
But let me expand on. Colorado looked so good against Arizona, but Arizona did not put up a fight. They even the game they won, Kumper had to stop 50 shots. I mean, and so I think they look better than they actually are, and Arizona looked worse than they really are.
The interesting thing about this round of the tournament is that we've seen the reinvention of the great line. If you look at it, there are 7 or 8. Every team has a great line almost. When you think of the Ben line in Dallas, and you think of McKinnon in Colorado, what Pacioretty and those guys do in Vegas, and then the Bergeron line, there, and Couturier and the guys in Philadelphia. We're seeing heavyweight line usage, and that, to me, that's the fascination about this tournament. And then it comes to depth, which over the years, in the end, it always goes to depth, doesn't it?
Always. And like, I've just always been a big believer in 4 lines. And when you can get 4 line depth, and the thing that I think makes it interesting with 4 lines is if one line is going bad, and in any given game, you can sit them and still have 3 lines deep. If you have a 3-line team and your second line is horrible, where do you go from there? You can't play the 4th line if you're not playing them regularly, or they're not a regularly played line. All of a sudden insert them for the guys that are not going on the second line. So it's in the playoffs, and it becomes a battle of attrition as it goes along, because there's going to be injuries. The 4 line deep, and if you have 5 top defensemen, which is a rarity, then I think you can afford 1 injury and still be good.
Well, Sheldon Keefe tried to put all his eggs in one basket in the series against Columbus, and that didn't work. Ultimately. It's
tough. It's really tough to do that, and I understand where he was coming from and why he was doing it. It's just it's tough. I mean, to have that if you want to have the perfect team. I just think it's got to be 4 line deep. Everybody have a role. I'll say one thing. I know if you have to go, but in Dallas, Andrew Cogliano always used to tell me, I need a role to be successful. Just don't put me out to play. Give me a role. Now, him, Fax, and Como have a role. Their role is to check the big line in Colorado. And, and they take it and they run with it. And that's their role. And every time they get out, they don't care about scoring, even though they've put some pucks in the net. That their role is to check these guys to a standstill, and if they do that, they feel satisfied. So everybody has a role in that team, and that's what makes me think Dallas might beat Colorado.
Well, I think we all look forward to seeing you again behind the bench, and preferably as a head coach. But however it turns out, I'm a guy who's I know there's a slight technicality in this, but never had a losing season as a head coach in the National Hockey League, and that's pretty hard to do. And you're to
what's the technicality?
Well, the tie thing,
Bob.
and overtime losses and whatever,
Oh, okay. I've never had a losing record. I know that.
No. You had more wins than losses if you don't include the overtime loss.
You got to be positive, Bob. You got to be positive. Hey, Bruce.
I'm just trying to figure this thing out. It's been 10 years or however long, and I still don't get it.
You don't have to answer this, Bruce, but I got to ask you. We talked about you'd be considering going back to Minnesota. Would you go back to Washington?
Back to Washington? Yeah, I was going to ask that one.
You know what? If they asked me, I would be tickled pink.
Yeah, I'm sure the phone's over. I'm sure you had lots of friends in Washington where the phone's been ringing since yesterday morning.
Yeah, since yesterday, I've had a lot of people in Washington reach out, and I had a great time there. I mean, look at when I got let go the first time, we were in first place. So I mean, it was all good, and they gave me a chance. So
let's face it, though, the star of your family in Washington was your wife in those damn carpet commercials. So
I think that was also my downfall too. By the way, hey, how much time we have? Because I can tell a story about that.
You got something?
Okay. It was funny. The one time, the one commercial I didn't want to do was when I was doing duck calls. And I went right up to George McPhee after, and I said, hey, George, we can't put this stuff on the air. This is awful. This is degrading here. And he said, well, Mercedes is a big sponsor. We got to do it.
A Northern Cardinal. Call.
Coach Bruce Boudreau is passionate about hockey.
Cuckoo.
And performing bird calls.
The great black-backed gull. Caw.
Fortunately, at American Service Center and Mercedes-Benz of Alexandria, we're passionate about just one thing. Mercedes. Just Mercedes.
An oriental turtle dove. Call.
I say, okay. So then the one game we're losing 7-0, and in New York. This was during the HBO thing. And so we're losing 7-0, and Ted just happens to be watching, and the commercial comes on in between periods with me doing duck calls. And I think it was the first time he saw it. And I mean, I couldn't believe how they attacked. They came after me and said, what are you doing these commercials for? And I'm going, I didn't want them in the first place.
Well, they pay the bills.
That's the problem of being a personality. That's the problem of being a personality, Bruce.
So I won't do any commercials if I'm ever lucky enough to be in Washington again.
All right,
okay, we're going to hold you to it.
Yeah, we're going to save that clip because that may come back to bite you in the ass, Boudreau. We love you, and we thank you as always for joining us, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again. So continued success with the broadcasting thing, but we got our fingers crossed that there's another head coaching opportunity waiting for you whenever next season begins.
I appreciate both you guys reaching out today, and this has been fun. And I haven't seen you in a while, so I miss you. So hopefully we get to see each other again soon.
Us too, and let's hope we can all cross that border so we can get together. Thanks, guys.
Hit him straight, Bruce.
Sounds
great.
Straight. Appreciate it. Bye,
Bruce
guys.
Boudreau, this time on the podcast. See you next time.
Bye-bye.